What is going on, everybody? We have a ranking video. As you can see here, we have tiers: amazing, good, average, trash, and you messed up. This is going to be 12-man PPR leagues. We're going to rank every single quarterback you could have drafted this year from the amazing to you messed up tier. Stay tuned to the very end because I have a very controversial, juicy pick that you're not going to want to miss. So stay tuned. We're going to get into that. They might even be in the trash category in the top 4. You don't know. You got to stay tuned to find out. Here we go. Let's get right into the video. All right, as I mentioned, this is going to be 12-man PPR leagues, and I have these quarterbacks ranked in the order in which they were drafted. So we have Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, right down here. These are guys that are all ranked 1 through 12 at the start of the season. Pat Mahomes was first, and like Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, they were at the back half of the pack. Like they were going 12th overall amongst quarterbacks. And I also have the rankings of where they finish of the year, so stay tuned for that. But let's get right into the first one, and that's Pat Mahomes. If you had Pat Mahomes, you were an average fantasy player this year. He had multiple games where he had 30-plus points or even 20-plus points, but there were just far too many games where he had less than 20, and he had those less than 20 games down the stretch, and that's why I'm putting him in the average tier. He probably sold on your team just based off where you drafted him. You probably took him first amongst all quarterbacks. And he probably sold for your team down the stretch. Like I said, you probably got, 5th, 6th, or 7th place if you had Pat Mahomes. He just wasn't the Pat Mahomes we're used to seeing in the fantasy leagues every single year. If you drafted Josh Allen, you most certainly won your league or you got second just based off where he was going in the draft. I'm putting him in the amazing category here. Just based off where he went and what he did this year, he was the top performer in fantasy this year. He basically rushed for a touchdown every single game, as did Jalen Hurts. But Josh Allen did have the most points. He threw the deep ball to, Gabe Davis. Stephon Diggs didn't really perform all that well this year, but Josh Allen really took matters into his own hands, and he pulled your team to a fantasy dub. If you drafted him, you were amazing. You won your league. You have those bragging rights, baby. Let's go. And the same can be said with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, he had the tush push from the 1-yard line every single time, and he at least had 1 touchdown per game. It was absolutely insane. Sometimes 2. And that tush push in Philly is it's unbeatable. It's hard. It's really hard to defend that, and that's why Jalen Hurts prospers. It really helps you can have a quarterback that squats 550, 600 pounds. But yeah, if you had Jalen Hurts this year, if you drafted him just based off where you did draft him, he performed swellingly for your team, if you will. So you won your league. If you were going up against Josh Allen, that would have been hard, but Jalen Hurts just week in, week out had 20-plus point games. I feel like every single team that either had Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts won their league this year. So if you drafted these two, congratulations to you. You are the fantasy champion this year. Come here, shake my hand. If you drafted Lamar Jackson, he was going 4th amongst QBs this year. I'm going to say you had a good year. Lamar Jackson really picked it up towards the end of the year. He was scoring points on points on points, multiple 30-point games. He probably dragged you to, maybe your team was 8th overall going into the playoffs. He might have gotten you to 4th or 5th, even maybe 3. He might have even gotten you to the, championship game if you're lucky. But Lamar Jackson had a great year. It kind of depends on who you had around him, I'd say. But based off where he was getting drafted, I think he finished in the good category. His threat to run, and he really improved his arm this year. If you drafted Lamar Jackson, you had a great year. Nothing to write home about, but you had a decent year. So if you drafted Lamar Jackson, congratulations to you. You did good. And moving on here, if you drafted Joe Burrow, you already know. You already know you messed up. He had a terrible year. He got hurt towards the end of it, and not even towards the end, kind of in the middle of the season with his wrist or whatever bullshit he had going on. If you drafted Joe Burrow, you messed up. The first 4 weeks, he had 40 points combined for 4 games. He was garbage. Jamar Chase was garbage. That whole Bengals offense was garbage. So if you drafted Joe Burrow just based off where he was going in the draft, you had a terrible year. And the same can be said with our boy Justin Herbert. I'm not going to say you messed up, but you were trash this year if you had Justin Herbert just based off where he was going. You think you were getting a steal by drafting him kind of in the later rounds, kind of where Trevor Lawrence was going, Justin Fields was going. But if you drafted him at that spot, there were so many better players you could have gotten that would have filled your team better than Justin Fields did. You were trash this year if you drafted either one of these guys, honestly, Joe Burrow or Justin Fields. if you were a little, if you thought you were getting a steal at this draft pick, you messed up at Justin Fields. Let me tell you what, this guy, he wasn't average, he wasn't trash. He's kind of in that middle category. I'm gonna put him in the trash category though, just because if you drafted him, you probably got at least 6 or worse. Justin Fields was not great this year, and that could be said because he's in Chicago or not. Who knows? Maybe he needs a new coaching regimen. I think it remains to be seen where he will go next year if not in Chicago, based on where if you want to draft him, if you want to take that chance. But I remember there was so much hype around Justin Fields going in later rounds. People were thinking they were getting a steal, and boy, were they wrong. Justin Fields was awful this year, and that's why he's going in the trash category. You probably got the lower half or like eighth. I'd say eighth or worse if you drafted Justin Fields. This guy was terrible this year. You were definitely not finishing in the top half of your league, and you were trash. Just admit it. You were straight trash. So you need to go back to the drawing board for next year, and then talk to me in these comments again. If you drafted Trevor Lawrence, it's going to be much of the same as Justin Fields. Trevor Lawrence was, again, average to trash this year, but just based off where you drafted him, I'm going to put him in the trash category. Trevor Lawrence, he had some weapons around him, but he got hurt kind of towards the later half of the year. He had some decent games where he put up, 25, 30 points. He had like a 3-game stretch where he put up like 25 plus, which is good down the stretch, but at the beginning of the year, man, it was rough for Trevor Lawrence. He could not figure it out, and I'm not sure if it's the environment around him or what's going on. Maybe there's too many clubs in Jacksonville they like sitting up on. What do you say? But yeah, Trevor Lawrence, that long hair, he was trash this year, man. He did not perform for your fantasy team. You probably had to pick up a quarterback off waivers that performed better, maybe like a Sam Howell or who else played good this year? Dak, he was off waivers, or anyone else off waivers. Maybe Kyler if you didn't draft him to begin with. But Trevor Lawrence was not it this year. His long golden hair is never going to be it. So I would stay away from Trevor Lawrence in next year's draft as well. And moving on here, if you draft Deshaun Watson, you fucked up, and you fucked up. He went to Cleveland for one thing only, and that was the money. If that's not evident, as a Cleveland fan, me personally, you can see in the background, I don't know what is. Deshaun Watson was a complete and total bust. Thank God for Joe Flacco. But Deshaun Watson, if you drafted him, you messed up your draft entirely. Some people thought he was going to go back to his old ways because he had a kind of a half year under his belt at the start of this year. And Deshaun Watson he had a couple promising games, but he just could not figure it out, man. This guy, he had a rough year. If you drafted him, you messed up, and you probably got last place. Moving on here, we have Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, if you drafted him, you were trash. He finished 42nd amongst all QBs in fantasy scoring for 12-man PPR leagues. And if you drafted Daniel Jones, I know what you were. You were a delusional Giants fan who thought they were going to run the NFC North this year. That just wasn't the case. He was terrible this year. Daniel Jones, he got hurt. He didn't put up the points. The whole Giants team was trash. Just based off the year you thought you were going to have, that you had last year, you thought he was going to be good. You thought this was your year. Well, turns out you are wrong. One thing only for you Giants fans, and that's this: Tommy DeVito. And moving on here, Tua Tagovailoa. All the weapons Tua had. He was just an average quarterback this year. He did last the entire year, which was a concern going into the fantasy draft. But based off where you drafted him, I don't think you made out too bad, but you definitely did not finish in the top half of your league. You were probably like 6th or 7th, just based off where you drafted him. He had all the weapons around him. He has Tyreek Hill, Raheem Mostert, Jalen Waddle. We all know this, but he still did not produce numbers that were conducive to where a quarterback in that position should produce. And that's why I'm putting Tua in the average spot, because you still probably did all right just based off where you drafted him, but he just did not put up the numbers that he needed to, have a good year at. And last but not least, we have Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, I'm putting him, this is a super controversial one, but I'm putting him in the amazing tier. And that's based off he more than likely wasn't even drafted this year. And that's because there were better quarterbacks ahead of him at the start of the year, you have to say. But he turned it around. He ended up being the 4th-ranked quarterback among all fantasy quarterbacks. He put up multiple, 4-touchdown, 5-touchdown games. Just the weapons around him. He's a really good quarterback. He reminds me a lot of this guy right here, Brock Purdy. And I'm going to put him also in the good category just because they're both kind of system QBs, but they do their jobs. And when they do their jobs, they're scoring touchdowns just based off the weapons they have around them. And that's kind of not the same to be said with Sam Howell, but Sam Howell also had some of the most yards for a quarterback this year. I'm going to put him in the average category because he was also a waiver wire pickup. And even though he was a waiver wire pickup, he still did a damn good job at filling a gap for your team. Like, let's say you drafted one of these three guys on the bottom. You probably either had to pick up Sam Howell, Brock Purdy, or Dak Prescott. And these guys performed for you. They picked up the slack where you fucked up in the draft early. They picked up your slack for you the back half. So that's these three guys, honorable mentions. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, or don't subscribe. We hate subscribers on this channel because we're Out of Pocket Sports. We love the negative comments. So if you guys hated this video, make sure you leave a negative comment. It's music to our ears. But if you did enjoy the video, just leave a comment in general. We love to hear it. If you agreed or disagree with any of these picks, maybe you hated Dak Prescott, maybe you think he should be way down here or you messed up, let me know. Because I'd love to spark some controversy. That's all we're about here at Out of Pocket Sports. We love sparking some controversy this time of year, especially in the new year, 2024. We want all the controversy, baby. Let's get it. If you guys enjoyed the video, thank you for watching. Peace.